Another long-awaited transfer arrival happened in the dead of night. So here we are, some 12 hours later to react. Welcome to Ipswich Town, Jaden Philogene, and welcome to Blue Monday, an Ipswich Town podcast. Thanks for joining me, Ben, to talk through this one. And not a live reaction show despite the branding, but we're reacting. And we're reacting to the arrival of Jaden Philogene for a rumoured £20-odd million plus add-ons, 4.5-year contract. On the face of it, a lot to be happy about, but it took a while, didn't it?
Does this class as a saga?
I think it's almost a saga, isn't it? Yeah. Someone set the bar, didn't he?
Yeah, right. Can you have a word with your mates in the media department? Because we're very careful on YouTube. We optimize for, right, when are we going to launch our show? It's got to be, we get all the data that says everyone's listening. I think your mates in the media department at Ipswich now, they're just optimizing for comedy. It's like, what was it, 10:30 at night? Last night, was it?
Yeah.
When was Hutchinson? That was even later, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, he was announced. I mean, the weird thing was, and everyone's picked up on it, all the branding and all the photography seems to have happened in the daytime.
Oh, really? Did it? Okay.
Whereas Hutchinson was like in the dark, wasn't he? In the middle of nowhere, in the stadium somewhere. But yeah, I mean, I think Marcus Harness might have set a bar at some point, like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock on a Friday. But Hutchinson and then Philogene, they've got to appeal to the international audience, don't we, Ben? America is waking up at that time. But exciting. I mean, we're trying to read into lots of stuff that's going on in January, but in terms of shelling out 20-odd million for a player, highly rated, of course, we'll talk about his stats in a second. In terms of it as a statement of intent, are you feeling the energy, feeling the intent off the back of it?
Yeah, I feel great about it. So it's kind of good that it's happened in January, because in the summer, I think we were all just in a bit of a washing machine of 2 promotions and Premier League, and you know, we kind of thought, oh, we're definitely going to break the transfer record for the club a couple of times, and it was just, I mean, obviously the higher ups and Mark Aston knew what was required and what was going to happen, but I think we as fans, me certainly, I'll speak for myself, I didn't quite understand it was going to be so crazy. So it's kind of nice that you know, we can just focus on a couple of transfers through January. And obviously there's been a big narrative on this podcast and through the Ipswich Town fan base that January has been real good ground for the recruitment team over both of the last 2 seasons. They've really nailed it, although nailed everything for the longest time now, haven't they? But yeah, we were hoping, I mean, if you assume, call this a January transfer rather than one that's just held over from the summer, we were kind of hoping, okay, maybe a wide man will come in, maybe someone to help out at the back. Everyone was hoping for a striker as well, and although the George Hurst return is kind of, I don't know, does that go on hold now? It seems like the status of George Hurst is the most important thing in every January transfer window at Ipswich Town now. But I feel great about the signing. I feel great about the double, as in Ben Godfrey and Jaden Philogene. But a lot to talk about Philogene and since the summer. And again, another example, like I think Hurst is the best example, Rich, of, you know, they identify someone, they don't go away, do they? Whether it's a year, whether it's 6 months, if that player has been identified by the professor, they'll wait as long as it takes, Rich.
Yeah, playing the old long game, aren't we? And you're right, George Hurst is a great example of that, isn't it? And not too dissimilar a situation, because I think we were in for Hurst, maybe a level down compared to everyone else, because it was a League One signing that we were attempting. And then he chose Blackburn on loan, didn't he, from Leicester, and signed a new deal with Leicester. And then I think maybe thought better of it, or it didn't work out as well as he hoped. Philogene's very similar, isn't it? Well, Villa stats up here for the season, only a few starts, 1 start in the League Cup, 1 start in the Champions League, and a couple of starts in the Premier League. 500 minutes in total, no goals, no assists. I mean, you can't, we debated it at the time when we were disappointed and emotional about it. You can't begrudge him at the time going back to Villa, but from a career standpoint, it hasn't worked out. And as he talked about in his kind of very brief interview, he'll be looking for minutes, won't he? And we need him to be playing minutes because we kind of need those options down the right, don't we?
Well, this then opens up the complicated conversation, which involves a fair amount of supposition and some outright guesswork for us as to why he returned to Villa in the first place. And look, I've not read the contract. If you have, more power to you. But the understanding is that the deal with Hull, that Philogene and Villa and Hull and Mr. Ilichali, who comes up on this podcast from time to time and always brings a smile to my face. The deal that they signed seemed to have a couple of pretty whacking clauses in it. One, apparently, that if Hull had got promoted, Villa could have taken Philogene back for £15 million, which is obviously them saying, well, if he gets us up, we got the TV money, we'll take a haircut on him, because obviously if he got them up, he would have been worth way more than 15 million quid. The other clause that we think we understand was in the contract was that Villa had this kind of favoured nations thing where whoever came in with whatever bid, if they matched it, all the other bids were off the table and Villa's was the bid. And we think, and again, I don't know, it's all supposition and what people who know more than me have reported, but it was an 18 million bid that was accepted in the summer. So you look at those stats, Rich, but behind those stats is a story of basic financial. It's not skullduggery, because it's not. Villa are just playing the game that you need to play to satiate FFP now, and for good money on their balance sheet, they've obviously done deals that have then bought Philogene back and sold him on again.
Yeah.
Immediately. And you have to bring Morgan Rogers into the conversation as well, because we were having a conversation while we were in the Championship last season of why are Aston Villa shipping out Jaden Philogene to Hull for, I think, like 6 million or whatever it was, and then signing Morgan Rogers from Middlesbrough after a cup of tea for 8 million. Why wouldn't they have just kept Jaden Philogene? But we now know why. It's about the movement of money on and off, and specifically on to Aston Villa's balance sheet. So that's a very long-winded way of me saying, well, they were probably just ticking him over at Villa, and what has needed to be done has been done. And I'm a financial expert, Rich.
Well, and the fear, we've talked about this as well, the fear is that City have played a similar game with Liam Delap with us, perhaps. So we'll find out in the summer, I'm sure. But let's keep things positive and on the here and now. In terms of kind of trying to understand the scenario behind why the summer deal back to Villa's happened, I think you've explained that really well. In terms of the player, I mean, it seemed he was quite keen to come here, but you can't begrudge him, A, playing under Unai Emery, B, potentially playing in the Champions League, which he has done, albeit only briefly, but it hasn't worked out. And what a great situation for him to find himself in, that he's got another Premier League team under a similarly excellent coach in Kieran McKenna who wants him, and an opportunity to play more minutes. It's kind of win-win, is it not? I know that we don't want to be lining the pockets of Villa necessarily, but it does feel like there's a lot of positives to this, and certainly the player and Kieran McKenna seem to have at least got what they wanted eventually.
Well, he's trying to find his level, isn't he? And we'll talk about his career and where he's been and what he's done, in terms of loans into the EFL. But his level is not Aston Villa yet, apparently, else they would have A, not sold him, B, signed him and played him, and C, not sold him again, for the second time around. Is his level, when we talk about the Hull stuff, is probably above the Championship as well. So hopefully we're the sweet spot, Rich. And we've spoken about this narrative on the podcast of you've got your elite clubs, and then you've kind of got, the likes of, I don't know, Newcastle and Villa sort of tacked along. When I say elite, I'm talking about Arsenal and Man City and Chelsea and Liverpool and probably Man United in a couple of years' time or whatever. But then everywhere else is, I don't know, is it much of a muchness? If you play for Fulham, could you also play for Ipswich? If you play for Ipswich, could you also play for Fulham or Palace or whoever? So he's trying to find his level as Premier League football player, and we'll happily take the punt, and I'm sure we'll get into discussing the the overarching transfer plan and the EFL All-Stars and buying the youngsters with resale value and all of that. But it's another one, could not be more in that sweet spot of a Hutchinson or a Clark or a Smodic's less so because of the age, but and then throw Delap in there as well. That's been the real unicorn of those signings.
And I guess, again, in terms of a differentiator for us, we've talked about McKenna plenty on this podcast, so let's have that as a given here. But obviously a teammate of Liam Delap's in this whole team that really should have got promoted last season, so that will be good. And a teammate of Amari Hutchinson and Liam Delap at England under 21 level. And it does feel like there's this is a place to come when you're just below the kind of elite level, but have so much potential and need great coaching. That bodes really well, doesn't it? But for Philogene, it's familiar faces. It's almost as if he's going to know most of the people that he needs to know already, coming in, fresh to the club, but with familiar faces. It's great.
And that's been flagged up in this leaked dossier or whatever of, that there's no time to waste and it isn't about developing players over the long term, even though there is a certain element of a lot of these players are, quote, not Premier League ready. But he'll slide in, and if he knows people, that helps. And it just strikes me with this Delap example from last year, just McKenna has just got going through the championship. I think he just obviously had a Google note on his phone or whatever, just adding to his shopping list every week, fancy that guy, fancy that guy, fancy that guy. But again, let's call Villa an elite club. It's a player developed at an elite club like Hutchinson and Delap that is possibly, hopefully, going to be ready to return at that level at some point. Not yet, and hopefully we can be the stepping stone, the beneficiaries if that's the case.
And add some transfer value along the way. You mentioned career stats. Should we look at the career and then maybe have a chat about where he's going to feature for Town? This is the kind of state of play of his career today. The kind of expanded out the current season of Villa, which we just talked about. But some real loans in there, good quality Championship clubs, Stoke, Cardiff, and then that Hull spell that really stands out in terms of goal contributions. Do you want to just kind of talk us through this from your perspective?
Yeah, so Stoke, I think, is curtailed by an injury. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And the good thing about doing this on YouTube, Rich, is everything you've said is recorded. And I remember doing a watch along, and I'd never seen Jaden Philogene play before. So you can actually see in real time my first reaction ever to clapping eyes on the player, which is quite good fun. And I remember saying, oh, this guy's going to be good fun. He looks like a box of tricks. He's out on the wing. I think he's playing on the left wing, possibly. I remember him getting absolutely maimed by a tackle against Huddersfield, possibly as well. Anyway, I'm going deep into my EFL recesses there. Cardiff, yeah. So I don't know what age he would have been there, but chaos season. I think they brought in Steve Morrison, gave him a load of players, and then I think Mark Hudson, who's with us now, isn't he, was the manager for a cup of tea, and then they went all Sabri Lamucci to avoid relegation for the last portion of the season, and you'll see by what's about to happen at Hull that maybe Liam Rossini was a better fit as a manager for Jaden Philogene. Obviously, there's the element of improving as you go and learning the level, but it's the Hull. Well, Hull wasn't alone, was it? They took him, but as we understand now, they took him, but Villa still had quite a hold over the player by the sounds of that contract.
Yeah,
yes.
and that kind of trajectory of, apologies for those listening, we'll kind of talk it through the stats, but in terms of goal contributions, you've kind of made mitigating circumstances, we think, around the Stoke line. So a goal in 6 starts or 11 appearances there, but it increases, doesn't it? It's that positive trajectory, that extrapolation that we want. 5 goal contributions in the games with Cardiff, and then last season, 18 in 32 appearances. And what was, that whole team really attacking. We had a really good ding-dong with them towards the end of that season. I'm not sure that Philogene was too impactful in that game compared to others. But that whole team, I think you had a lot of love for them. I think we all did, and hoped that Liam Rossini would get them over the line at the expense of perhaps a certain team up the road in that playoff campaign, but didn't quite happen. But that was almost a mirror image of the way that we were playing, which makes, again, this signing even more of a logical fit.
Yeah, and we've spoken about this with Jack Clark, about how players would fit with McKenna, where we thought there might be a little bit of work to do in terms of Jack Clark, of, you know, this idea of Sunderland being fairly basic, actually, of, you know, switch the play quickly, get him on his own and let him do what the hell he wants with the ball. If he gives it away, fine, whatever. He'll get you enough goals and assists and to justify that tactic. Hull were quite slow under Liam Rosina in terms of not kind of Scott Parker level, but not Kieran McKenna level. If you kind of have your grade of Bielsa level speed football all the way down to Mick McCarthy level speed football here, Hull would be closer to the bottom of that kind of speed. So I think he got. Do you remember when John Barnes used to play for Liverpool and the game almost used to stop when he got the ball, didn't it? It was like, right, here we go. Barnes is going to make a goal now. There's one for you, kids. He was the world's best at one point. I'm sorry, playing in this division. We talk about European bans and what he would have done, but there you go. But yeah, there was almost a bit of a case with that, of the slow build-up with Hull, and Philogene could stop on the ball and, you know, do his box of trick stuff and dribbles and whatnot. So little bit different than the Jack Clark thing of, okay, you know, Joe mentioned it the other week of, yeah, in the Premier League, you can't have 3 goes at whatever it is you're doing, because you'll only get one. You don't get the second 2 goes. Whereas I think with the Philogene under Liam Rosina to Philogene under McKenna, there's probably going to be a little less time on the ball, I think, and you know, the thing we do where we're building it up around one corner and then it quickly goes and somebody goes the other side or whatever. And, you know, have you made a 50-metre hole for Leif Davis to run into or what have you? But it should fit in really, really nicely. And I think as a direct comparison, I mean, he's closer to Hutchinson, isn't he, than Clark? But I think it's a bit more tricky than Hutchinson. You know, Hutchinson, I take as a player who joins a move while the move's in flow and kills, you know, whereas Philogene, you know, maybe he's going to stop on the touchline and start the move. I don't know, maybe I'm being unfair on Hutchinson, who's very good at that, obviously. But, yeah, and the idea that this Championship All-Stars thing, Richard, that if you told us during the Championship season that Jack Clark, Jaden Philogene, Sammy Smodics, less Liam Delap, because he wasn't a star in the Championship, but those 3 were the guys, weren't they, in the Championship last year? They were doing all the top numbers, and it's another one in the door in this crazy trajectory up as a club. Do you remember taking that question at the Blue Monday live show of, you know, be great to get that Jack Clark from Sunderland? We all laughed, and there's no chance he'll play for us. We'd have to get promoted for that to happen, and here we are.
And he can't even get in our first team now either.
Stop it.
Another comment. That's one for another time. In terms of what we've kind of tried to talk there through, what we think is this kind of contribution going to be. We've nicked some bits and pieces from the internet. This is from Who Scored. Likes to talk about strengths and weaknesses. We were talking off air. Eczema doesn't appear in weaknesses, which is a positive. Aerial duels does, which is not a surprise. But dribbling, finishing, tackling and defensive contribution show up in the strengths. I mean, tackling and defensive contribution, Ben, that's something that everyone in our team kind of needs to do at Premier League level. So that's positive. But style of play, cut inside, we know he can play both sides. We think notionally primarily right-footed, but so can play the side. So that cutting inside doesn't make sense. Isn't a surprise. Sorry, likes to dribble, gets fouled often. Again, those 2 things kind of dovetail quite neatly. Likes to play short passes, but likes to tackle. Anything there surprise you?
I think we brought Harry Kane up on one of these ones where it's like strengths, all of them.
Everything.
Weaknesses,
football.
None. Strengths, football, weaknesses, stringing sentences together. No, that's unfair on glorious. Glorious Harry Kane, isn't it? An England hero, anyway. It's so you almost need to fit it into the context of what he's going to be asked to do. And we've had this conversation that a lot of the players here, Philogene, Clark, Broadhead, Hutchinson, Smodics, maybe Burns and Chaplin less. You think Burns can only play down the right and Chaplin can only play in the 10. But the rest of them, you would think could play, like Broadhead could play left orthodox, right inverted, or 10. And so could Clark, and so could Hutchinson, and now so could Philogene as well. But we kind of know with the whole Leif Davis Golden Boy thing that the right-sided role is a bit different than the left-sided role, isn't it? That you might have to even up the team by running back a little bit more on the right-hand side than you would on the left-hand side. The idea is you're going to come inside, and here comes the Golden Boy left back, who's going to be like another attacker there. But the 10 position is interesting. I mean, I know Joe has always argued, look, think of it as a second striker. Think of it as a finisher, someone who joins in a little bit in the build-up, but gets into the box. So I don't know. Do you waste a tricky, dribbly player there? Do you invert him and have him on the left-hand side? I don't know.
McKenna's wanted to have Amari in the 10 position since the start of the season, and has kind of had to through the Igbene injury, maybe the form of Burns, a couple of injuries for him too, has been kind of forced to put him out there. And I think the fans want to see Amari out there, don't they? Chaplin did a good spell in the number 10 role, but it feels to me that it's either Igbene when he's fit or Philogene out there, and Amari versus Chaplin in the 10, and then Broadhead, Clark, Smodic down that left-hand side.
Well, I think Smodic fancies himself in the 10 as well. He likes it there. And if the gig is pressing and finishing, he might even be, I know Chaplin's done the job so well, he might even be the best qualified out of anyone to do there. But it's really, really fascinating. And if you take... If you call Smodic as someone who's going to play in the line off the front, and you take Delap and Hurst out of the equation here, Philogene, Clark, Broadhead, Hutchinson, Burns, Smodic, Chaplin, which is just fantastic because it acknowledges the brilliant work of Chaplin and Burns and Broadhead in the journey. Hutchinson's kind of got a foot in both camps as a new player and an old player. And then you add in Smodic and Clark, and now Philogene as well. And I think, Rich, the fact they were in for him in the summer says this is the amount of numbers. I'm kind of disregarding Ogbene in the conversation a little bit. It
felt like that was a little bit of consequence of maybe not getting that deal done, and then Burns picking up the Liverpool injury, perhaps. And there's been obviously some lingering history there. So I agree with you. And the fact that he can play either side, maybe even in that 10, I think justifies it anyway.
Yeah. And I mean, it should fit in lovely for two ways. One, in terms of the strategy on the pitch, and the other, obviously, in terms of the strategy off the pitch. That if you're going to sell, if you get relegated for big money, I mean, I'm not sure Jaden Philogene needs more moves in his career than he's already had. I'm sure he'd quite happily get through at least a transfer window without a deal. But you know what happens if someone plays well for 3 months in a relegation scrap, and there's clauses in the deals. And we'd imagine, it's so ridiculous now, Rich, that I well believe, I don't have any information on this, that there's going to be lots of clauses in contracts about, right, if you're going to come in, you can do this before July for this money. You can have them, but here's your FFP premium that you've got to pay, because, if we're selling before then, it needs to make material difference to the bottom line number that's going down for the FFP and the financial year ending then, as opposed to 1 day later, So I'm really, really hyped about it. Again, I don't think we mentioned how old he is, Rich. How old is he? What is, like 2021?
So I'm 22. Yeah. So
I'll be 23 in a few weeks, won't he? But yeah, just stocking up with more assets. And we talked about building assets, building value in the squad, and putting yourself as far away from where we've been for the last 20 years as a...
It's so weird, isn't it? It's jarring how smart, intelligent, our recruitment strategies. I mean, even if we were to get relegated, these players, assuming Philogene makes a goal contribution impact towards the end of the season, if the worst were to happen, you kind of even O'Shea, the likes of O'Shea, have probably gone up in value from their performances. It's just nuts to think of the type of recruitment we were doing under Marcus Evans and that era compared to now.
And it's not wanting to go back to that. And yes, we have ownership with the willing to spend now, but we've all been here before. You could have Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk owning your club as a kind of duo. But if you're the wrong side of FFP, they can't spend any of their trillions of assets that they've got. So you've just got to be trading on the right side of it for the longest time. And I dare say even our friends down the road, even, what they seem to be now a championship club now, but they're still able to trade better than all of the EFL because they've historically done well with the money when they've been up and the parachute money and had assets when they've been back down. Obviously, we would love those assets to be, they're worth even more money if you stop up in the Premier League. But, we just, the club is just in, from the transfer window,
isn't it?
Before what was the transfer? I can't remember what summer it was where we signed 26 players under Paul Cook or whatever it was.
2021, wasn't it, I think?
So if you imagine comparing the squad there, and I know people get emotional about
21-22, apologies. Yeah. 2021 was the season where we had 3 players outside the training ground. I'm trying to remember that. Di Cornell and Ollie Hawkins, wasn't it?
Ollie Hawkins.
Stephen, what's his face? Hunt, was
Hunt.
it? No,
yeah.
From one to the sublime to the ridiculous, isn't it? Of the other way around.
But people get very emotional about like these transfer marked player values and squad values and take them very seriously. But if you were to do that kind of rough back of napkin, math exercise, then it's just, absolute eons, light years away. And okay, maybe a Fulham or a Bournemouth or a Nottingham Forest, they're another light year up from us. But we've got to bridge the gap, and signings like Jaden Philogene will certainly help to do that.
Yeah, we don't think we'll see him. So we're recording this Thursday. By the time you might have listened to this, it could be Friday or Saturday. Who knows? We don't expect him to feature. I'm not sure the club have confirmed he signed in time. So let's assume not. Would you expect him to start against Man City at home on Sunday, Ben?
It just depends on availabilities and whatnot. Look, it's a player who's played, as you pointed out, against Bayern Munich in the Champions League this season. It's a player that Kieran McKenna thinks he knows. It's a player that's wanted. It's a player that's presumably 100% fit, ready to go. Obviously, there's tactics and strategy and game models. But as you've just said, from one professor to the other, it's not that he's not going to have been tuned into all of, I know they're different managers, but, if you're working for Unai Emery, you certainly have to be able to deliver exactly what he wants and a game plan and a strategy and a game model, to use the hipster parlance, on top of it. So ideally, you would not want him starting. You'd want at least some time, because, what even is... So it's game day today, and tomorrow will be a warm down, won't it, on the Friday? You have one day on the...
It's going to be tough, isn't it?
On the Saturday. So you're literally just coming in cold, a bit like Marcus Stewart when he signed. So go on the pitch and do
score a goal, Marcus.
Yeah, score a goal. Do a good football. Yeah, and you'd assume the tactical stuff comes the other end. But narrative theory and chaos theory does work. Sometimes just
nice boost, wouldn't it? Fan base will be behind him, and
exactly.
I think I've got Telegram open. Always have Telegram open. Joe Fair's posts. TWTD says he can't play tonight. I assume that's Philogene, so definitely won't be featuring tonight. I suspect he might come out with a scarf and all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we deal with Sunday. We have recorded a pre-match show. Pre-recorded because of all the logistics about recording shows this week, and we didn't really debate that one because it hadn't happened at that point, but the timing is a challenge for us, and maybe the guys will talk about it tonight. We are at the time of the Thursday recording, live reaction to Brighton with Mikey and Seb tonight. So they'll debate it maybe a bit further on the context of how Brighton has panned out. And then, of course, Ben and the guys will be back on Sunday to talk all about it. So plenty going on, plenty of conversation points. We're all speculating at this point. A couple more things for you before we say goodbye, Ben. The first is that we've managed to get through almost half an hour without talking about Philogene's agent. So I think job done. We'll leave that very much where it is.
Let's assume, Rich, the cause of the saga was the incredibly difficult contractual stuff in terms of FFP and Aston Villa rather than any nefarious agents and Instagram posts. And I do tend to bat for agents a little bit because I know a lot of footballers have really, really good agents, and they wouldn't be. And to mention Marcus Stewart again, I remember asking what advice we give to a young player: get a good agent you trust. They'll make your career a lot easier. There are, of course, different types of agents. He's having some
fun, isn't he? That's the way to look at it, I think.
And like you say, he's in the building now. The deal's done.
Move on.
Let's move it along.
So the final question, I think, and obviously really keen to get your views in the chat. You can join us on Telegram, and the debate has continued seemingly 24/7 anyway. Blue Monday, ITFC.co.uk is our website. The link to join Telegram is on there, as well as lots of other fun stuff. The question for the chat in the comments, and I'll ask for you now, Ben, is how many more? And obviously, where?
Well, you'd think... I mean, they've done a loan, but the loan was a European loan because he was from Atalanta, wasn't he, Ben Godfrey? Well, you tell me. Everyone said Striker and Al Hamadi out on loan. And, not to labour the point about Al Hamadi's poor form, but obviously the FA Cup game went the polar opposite how we kind of wanted it to for him. So, but again, Rich, it's like, where do you find your ready-to-go striker to make an impact in January so you can do the deal, but Crystal Palace can't? Do you know what I mean? It's difficult, isn't it? But one more, do you think?
Yeah, well, Ian Nacho's been mentioned, hasn't he? And that would be another foreign loan if it's anything, I suspect.
Oh, is he not at Leicester anymore?
No, I'm trying to remember where he's at.
Yeah, he's going to go off about Tom Cannon going back to Leicester.
Well,
but that's irrelevant then.
Left on a free, I think.
Oh, okay, I didn't realise that. Sorry.
So that would be a foreign loan if it happens, or a perm deal, and that's the kind of ilk of striker. Striker coming in as you guys talked about on Sunday. They're going to be behind Liam Delap, aren't they? And even George Hurst, I think we underrate, and because of the injuries, perhaps. But George Hurst is almost
a case of. Can you just come and help?
Yeah.
Can you come and help? Do a nice deal with a big goal bonus. Understand that Delap and Hurst are going to do a lot of running, but also understand that there might be times where just need someone in a game. Can you come into a Premier League game and hold your own? I know
the Premier League Kiefer Moore. Is it Kiefer Moore?
It's hard though, isn't it? Because Kiefer Moore's a bloody specialist, isn't he? Now in terms of the champ, you'll do well to get the Premier League. You'll probably find the Premier League Kiefer Moore's worth a lot of money, isn't it? But yeah, I'm sure the guys in the recruitment team will find someone. And again, we're fully behind Ali Al Hamadi. But if the answer is just you upgrade that position, and I know some people will be arguing that that's doable right now, then it's a net gain, isn't it? Especially if Hurst, please, George, can play a few games between now and the end of the season.
Stay fit, George. Thanks, Ben, for your insights. Appreciate that. Let us know your thoughts in the comments if you made it all the way to the end, or even if you didn't. Thumbs up and a subscribe, very much appreciated here. Let us know your thoughts. Let me put a picture. There he is. Look at him. Steely determination.
Beautiful.
There he is, Jaden Philogene, joining Ipswich Town finally on a permanent transfer. Thank you for joining us as we react. Let us know all about it. Telegram in the comments, and join us for the live reaction to Brighton, pre-match, rewind, flagship, content coming at you, left, right and centre. Fingers crossed some positive results on the pitch to talk about too. But for now, thank you for everyone for watching.